Booktube, I'm Scott.
I'm now.
We are Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and we are about to get shady.
Too much RuPaul for you.
This is our worst books of 2021.
2020.
2020.
He's getting ahead of himself. Shit we already know we didn't like reading.
Crap books. Yeah, of 2020. Do you know, this is actually a really dumb metaphor, because if we're throwing shade, then surely the sun's out. Yeah?
You're the one who put the glasses on.
I
The library's open. It's time to read for filth.
Because reading is what?
Sometimes a chore.
Sometimes a chore. So, what book would you like to discuss? Are these in order of best to worst, or are these just...
They're just in the stack.
They're just trash.
They're in the stack. The Night Circus was not horrible, but basically pointless.
This is a book that you were so excited about reading at the time.
At the time, but can I tell you, I hadn't read a proper book in so long. The bar was quite low.
So this broke a slump for you.
No, I don't think this broke a slump. But it was one of the first books I read this year, and I have not made time for reading for almost a decade. So, you know, but that doesn't make it good.
But you enjoyed it.
I did. I enjoyed the atmosphere. The atmosphere created in this book is fantastic, but there's no plot.
Yeah, there isn't, or characters,
and
or
what
themes.
plot there is to it, there's no urgency in the plot. It's just, I'm not sure why I care about anything other than the fact that it's pretty, and that's not really my style.
Lots of candied apples and stuff.
Yeah, the smell of caramel popcorn.
But some people like that sort of stuff in books, and no disrespect.
Well, plenty of disrespect, but
Jeez.
None intended.
No, but like,
if that's your thing, that's your thing. But I found it quite disappointing. I was expecting more. I was just expecting more. And I think that's what worst books often means, is the ones that disappointed you the most, the ones that you thought would be bigger, better, bolder, something.
Yeah. Well, I've given myself a rule that I'm not going to discuss any of the 20 books I DNF'd this year. How good is that, 20 books?
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. Anyway, the first one I'm going to discuss is Americans. This is just fucking stupid.
Because you can't see.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just... I continued with the gag for too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. American Psycho by Bret, Easton, Ellis. This hurt me in my brain because it was mind-numbingly boring. And it hurt me in my brain because, dear God, what the fuck? This...
Because it was gross.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a prudish reader. I'm quite happy to read horribly brutal stuff, and you know, when we did our tops, I listed Rohingya Mysteries, A Fine Balance, right up there, and people have been telling me how miserable and sad they found that book, and I was like, oh yeah, it was kind of a downer, wasn't it? And that's the sort of stuff I like.
Yeah.
But this is just like, I'm not shying away from horrible stuff, but this does
cross the line.
It's you know that, like, it felt like Bret Easton Ellis was just trying to be as gross as he could possibly be, just to prove a point, just to do it and see if he could get away with it.
Well.
And he did. And I want, think of really try and think of the most fucked up thing that you can think of, and know that Bret Easton Ellis will beat that. Because I'm fucked up. I can think of some horrible things, and the most horrible thing that I can think of, he did it, and then he beat it. So I won't tell you what it is, but it's in that book. The most fucked up thing I can think of is in that book. And now I know something even more fucked up. As far as a book goes, like as far as the literature in this book goes, I thought that there was the structure of a good book was there with once you took that out, but that the constant dropping of brand names was tedious and over the top. The cleverness of the unreliable narrator was not that clever in the end, and the whole thing was really just a bit easy for the amount of yuck
I
had to go through. That was really...
There was no payoff.
The payoff was not worth the trauma.
Yeah.
And most fucked up book I've ever read. Now.
The Senegal falls into the category of interesting premise and no follow through.
Oh no.
I was really excited about this. I saw it on Emma's channel, Drinking by My Shelf, and then somewhere else as well, and
Jean?
Maybe? But I can't remember. A couple of channels that, read reasonable stuff. So I was intrigued by the premise because it's about having a senator for the community. So when a person dies, the senator's job is to come along and eat specific foods that match the sins of that person, and thereby take their sins into their body by eating them, and absolve the person who has died.
And that was more interesting than the book.
And that was more interesting.
Dear God.
I thought it was interesting because they get their tongue cut out. They're shunned by society. They're like an outsider. It's a position that's given to you as a punishment. And there's all this sort of guilt around it, and that's what I just thought it might be interesting, and it just wasn't. It wasn't. It was a bit of a day in the life of a sin eater mostly, and I don't care what kind of food matches up with what kind of sins, and the only thing I really liked is there was some descriptions of fat bodies in here that was not demeaning, so that was nice.
Fat positive.
Well, I wouldn't call it fat positive. It just wasn't
fat negative.
It just wasn't shit about fat people, which was good. But ultimately, it didn't deliver on any kind of real plot, and the characters were boring.
So avoid that book.
Yeah, sorry.
Or if you need to go to sleep, it sounds perfect.
I mean, yeah, it was just so blah.
Yeah. Okay, I feel a little bit bad about including this one on the worsts of 2020, but it was really bad. The Story of My Life by Helen Keller. So I feel very bad about including Blind Deaf Lady on this list. But this was an autobiography of Helen Keller. The second half of the book were all the letters she had ever written between the ages of about 3 and 15. And it read like a child was writing it, because guess what? A child was writing it.
Yeah, okay.
And the first half of the book, if you are blind and deaf, you clearly are going to have difficulties with society that I don't have. You are clearly going to have a different experience. And none of that was depicted in this novel. Helen Keller is the first blind deaf person in the US to get a university degree or college degree or
something along those lines.
That's an inspirational story. And I do want to hear about the troubles that she has, but the troubles that she was outlining in this novel were about people being bureaucratic and making things hard for her, and not they weren't.
Oh, I imagine that's a lot of the problem you have, is it?
Yeah, but they weren't problems that I hadn't faced myself. They weren't.
Yeah, okay.
they were just, there was no, she gave herself, and I mean maybe that's how she got the degree, but she gave herself no leeway for being blind and deaf. She didn't tell me about the struggles. She didn't ever mention Braille. She didn't, like, there was nothing, and the writing was poor.
Yeah, okay.
So
I have read, I don't remember the name of it, but I've read a different biography of Helen Keller, and her life is so fucking interesting. So interesting. She's such an interesting person. It's disappointing to hear that the autobiography doesn't stand up to the story.
Yeah, and look, the other, like, we're talking about a book that's 150 years old or something. It, you know, that style of writing is often, you know, it just hasn't aged well. Is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Bummer.
What's your next bad one?
This sort of falls into the same category as the Sin Eater. This was all premise and no follow through. The Farm by Joanne Ramos, which I read in May for Asian Readathon.
I read that too, and while it wasn't a good book, I think you've been a little bit harsh.
No, I was really... Number one, you've got 3 times the books of me to choose from, and I was really disappointed. It's about a surrogacy farm, but it sort of sets itself up as almost a dystopian, and surrogacy farms exist, and this one wasn't particularly different to how they exist in the real world, and this wasn't, but it also wasn't really showing me the plight of the women in the real world, and there was no grit in it. It was it did highlight that the women who were being paid to be surrogates were underprivileged, but it didn't highlight what that meant and what renting your body for pregnancy costs you, and the downside of that transaction, like, at all.
I actually felt the second half of this book was written by, like, it felt like the author changed. Like, there was one person doing the setup, and then once the setup was done, it turned into, like, a bitchy teenage...
Yeah, I feel like
Mean Girls.
It was, like, there was actually quite a bit of suspense, and, like, it was creepy in the beginning, and it had a whole lot of potential that just died. Like, it just didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, it got to be about, like, the cliques of the girls on the farm and how they interacted or didn't interact with each other. And that was not the kind of book that I signed on for. Do you know what I mean? It was really...
But I think when you talk...
It wasn't what it said on the tin.
When you say that it's set up as a dystopian and we have this sort of stuff in real life, isn't that the whole point of a dystopian novel?
Yes, it is. No, the point of the dystopian novel is to either highlight the structures that cause the problem or show me the result of the problem and why it's so bad. And this doesn't do either. This doesn't highlight the structures in capitalism that cause women of certain races and classes to be...
Or immigrants
to be... vulnerable, and it doesn't show me the outcome of their vulnerability. It does neither of those things. It really was like a horror story without a scary guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, it missed the point.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I actually pretty much agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's not a terribly written book, but like you said, there was a real change in tone in the middle, and I just didn't feel like it fulfilled the brief.
Yeah. Number 4 on my list, counting down. Nell's not doing the countdown.
Whatever order.
But these are progressively getting worse. A Place of Greater Safety by Hilary Mantel. This was... I think this book killed our book club in our real life book club.
Yeah, it did. Murdered
Because
it.
I was the only one to finish this book.
Because it was heavy.
It was it was fat. It was shonkily written. The characters were it was just a red hot mess. It was I couldn't tell you what happened in it. Like
I was really excited for it, and then Scott started reading it, and I was like, oh.
I started to research the French Revolution because I thought maybe, like, I know a bit about the French Revolution, but I've never studied it. Like, do I not know enough about it? Like, I'm just some guy that's probably watched a few documentaries and read a couple of articles and that's it. And then I researched the French Revolution, and I realised that I knew
a reasonable amount.
A reasonable amount about it, and that this book wasn't it wasn't telling me anything new, and it spent a lot of time with the aristocracy, but it really I cannot believe that this lady went on to win a Booker Prize. Like I'm so shocked that she is Hilary Mantel of Wolf's Hall, who...
But can I tell you, I've seen a lot of, not everyone agrees that Wolf's Hall is amazing, so...
Maybe, I've never read Wolf's Hall, so maybe I would like that, but if you have read A Place of Greater Safety and Wolf's Hall, are they chalk and cheese, or is Wolf's Hall just a more polished version,
Yeah.
Because that was watery. That was, what I said about the Donna Tartt novel when we did the wrap up. If you broke the binding and threw the pages everywhere, you couldn't put it back together.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before the coffee gets cold,
this will be controversial. I've seen a lot of people like this novel.
So many people love this, and I think this was... The plot was convenient. I felt like it was trying to it was trying to make me cry. That's the whole point. The person who sat down to write this was like, how many words is this going to take to make them cry? And it didn't make me cry, because it felt false. It didn't feel character-driven, or it didn't feel like it was exposing the truth of people. It felt saccharine and manipulative. So it's based around the idea of a time traveling coffee shop. But everyone's reason for wanting to time travel is like super emotional. Like the first person who wants to time travel is the wife of a man with dementia. And she's trying to decide whether to put him in a home or not.
Nobody's trying to go back in time to bet on the horse race that they know the outcome of.
No, like the things that you would do, no one's doing. And it's all very convenient. Like the limitations of the time travel are pretty hardcore. You can't leave the seat that you're in the coffee shop when you time travel. So you've got to hope that the person that you want to interact with is in the coffee shop at that time. And it was not for me.
Not for you, but lots of other people love that novel, so...
Yes, and I can see if it was your kind of thing, I can see the appeal, because it wasn't like bad writing or anything like that, but I just, the whole construction of the plot really missed the mark for me.
So Artificially Sweet is your...
Yeah.
Right, my number 3 is Lady Audley's Secret, by Braddon. Mary Kate Braddon? No, don't remember her name. I read this for Victober. This is a classic Victorian scandalous novel, and I just found it horribly sexist, to be honest. The villain of this piece, I completely agreed with every decision she made. Her husband left her penniless. She went away. She didn't know that he was alive. He went away to mine gold in Australia until he found his fortune. Right? Like, yeah, because you're definitely going to make money doing that. Like, Like, as Australians who learn about the gold mining at school, it wasn't people that just died in the gold mines for no reason. Like,
no, not at all.
That didn't happen. He went away to Australia to mine gold, made his fortune, got lucky, came back, found that his wife had gone off and married somebody else and assumed a different name, right? And I thought that this was going to be like some sort of critical expose that this had survived because it made a comment about society, that it was going to...
Yeah.
It didn't. No, it just kept going down this path, and I kept waiting for it to twist and to turn itself on its head and to point out what it was doing, and I got to the end and it finished, and I was like, but you didn't do it. You just basically said that this woman who married a rich man
in order to survive
was an evil harpy, and you demonized her. And then, you know, okay, so she was actually a bit evil in this book, you know. But, I mean, I didn't agree with the murdering she did. I just... But up until that point, I was with her the whole time.
Yeah, okay.
I felt like she was the good guy, and I felt like the book didn't agree with me. I felt it changed the interpretation from being a feminist novel to being a toxic masculine novel. And maybe somebody who's read it might say that you got it wrong, and I would be delighted if that is actually the case. But I'm pretty sure it's a toxic novel, and I hate toxic novels.
Yeah, well, it's good. That's why I like you.
Yeah. Now, what's next on your list now? This is also on my list.
Is it?
Yeah, and it's the next one I want to discuss. So I thought you did that little shuffle there deliberately, but you didn't.
No, I didn't. This was one of the first books we read as the book for our...
Yeah, this was the very first book we did for our book club, and frankly, I'm surprised it didn't kill it. If Hilary Mantel could kill it, but this book by Neil Gaiman
we were still young and optimistic, and there was no coronavirus in the world.
Yeah. This is a terrible novel.
I didn't like it at all. I really like weird stuff. I like it when things get mystical or magical or just like strange. I really like that. And the idea of a pantheon of gods coming in and interfering with this dude's life really sounds awesome to me. But
for somebody who is writing essentially a YA novel, I really expected the writing to be better. Like, I mean, I'm not saying... with a YA writer, I'm not expecting lovely, flowery sentences.
I didn't have a problem with the writing. I had a problem with the pacing and...
Yeah, I'll give you the pacing.
The pacing and the plot didn't really have... The most interesting part of this story was like a weird little anecdote on the side.
By the time it got to any sort of twists or reveals, I didn't care. It was just like, was I meant to see that coming or wasn't I? I don't
Scott was much angrier at this book than I was. But I, you know...
Books that have no structure to the world that they're in are ultimately flawed. If you do not place a limitation on the world, if you do not...
Yeah, if anything
can happen, your book is flawed and it is utter crap. And then if you add bad writing to it...
You can't create tension if there's no limits. You can't create urgency if there's no limits.
Exactly.
Like, if you create mysticism to the point where anyone, like most of the characters can make anything happen, which, hello, they're all gods, it's...
Yeah, you're losing suspense. What do you have? Neil Gaiman's not funny.
No.
He's not funny. He's not a nice writer. He's got no pacing and he has no limits. What the hell? Why is it so fat?
Yeah, I didn't understand why it was so long. And some of the god characters were like funny or interesting a little bit, but you had them for like, and they were gone. And it was just, it was nothingy. It was
Not only is this book bad, but I'm angry at the publisher.
The
publisher and the editor should be sacked and not allowed to work in the industry again.
I'm really scared that this is actually what Neil Gaiman does and all he's capable of, because so many people love him, and that terrifies me. Because
a lot of people have said try his, what is it, a lake at the end of the bedroom or something. I don't know, but I'm not interested in giving Neil Gaiman another shot.
Suze has sent us another Neil Gaiman book, which we may give an eye to, but I think it will be a quick DNF if it starts to go down this path. I can tell you.
I'm not giving Gaiman another shot. He's had it.
He's had it.
I don't care.
Not even for your love of Suze?
He's not redeemable.
Oh.
He's not even being married to Amanda Palmer can redeem him.
Oh, she is excellent.
Right. Do you want to reveal your worst book of the year, or shall I?
What's yours?
Okay. My worst book of the year is The Female Quixote by Charlotte Lennox. The premise of this book is essentially, imagine if Don Quixote, instead of being a knight, was a heroine from a love story, right? And got everything wrong and made hilarious misunderstandings. The problem with this book is, and there's a lot of them, but the first problem is it's not funny, right? It falls short on the humour, right?
Yeah.
And there, everything just falls down from there. It's just horrible. It's a red hot mess, and frankly, this would have been a DNF if I didn't read it so early in the year and I didn't have my DNF revelation
later in the year.
It wasn't offensive. It was just so badly written and just not funny, and the characters were not believable, and there was no consistency. It was just terrible.
Not as bad as The Wasp Factory, which is the worst book ever written.
You are really just trying to be inflammatory.
I stuck with this because it's one of my husband's favourite books.
This book is excellent.
It's terrible. It is from the perspective of a child serial killer, and it's fucking boring. He spends most of the time giving you a laundry list of the bugs in his house, and it's just...
He does spend a bit of time giving you a laundry list of the bugs in his house.
Legitimately, it is... I get that... I understand what the attempt is in this. I get that they're trying to create sort of a mindset that's a little bit obsessive and is repeatedly checking on the safety totems in his life. But the repetition is boring, and the big reveal at the end is dumb. It's stupid.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll disagree with you on that. Would you say, would it be fair to say that this is a love it or hate it novel?
I don't understand how you love this novel. I don't understand how any intelligent person could love this novel.
Oof.
And I know several intelligent people who do, so I don't know, maybe I missed something. But it's terrible. It took me so long to read it because it was so
It's such a
bad.
quick read.
So you audiobooked it. Your pace is chosen for you. That's cheating. Read it from the physical and don't gouge your eyes out.
Is this being chewed by our dog?
Yeah.
Did you do that out of hate or?
No, our dog, when he was little.
Oh, 184 pages.
Yeah. And I reckon it took me bloody 3 months. Like, it took me so long to read this book.
It's a weekender.
It is. It should be. But it was like chewing glass.
Here, if you have a little bit of apple and use your molars, it's much easier.
I just don't understand why anyone would like this.
It's brilliant.
That's it.
That's it. Well, that's our... There's a dozen books. No, there's not. There's
11.
A Stingy Baker's dozen there. There's a Butcher's dozen.
Yeah. Those will be the buggies who rip you off.
Yeah.
Bakers are good.
Yeah. Butchers need to fund their heroin addiction.
I don't know why.
Not that we don't know butchers. So, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, so what were your worst books of the year?
And what do you think of these?
Yeah. And, you know...
And tell Scott that he's wrong about the Wasp Factory.
Tell Nelle that she's just ridiculous.
I'm not. I'm right.
I just... People have said you're ridiculous before about the Wasp Factory. I just haven't told you about them because your ego is too delicate.
That's funny. I married you in public.
Jeez. That's harsh.
Well, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching, folks.
If you got to the end, give us a like, subscribe. Yeah, and I feel quite bad now. Bye. Did you have the mouse? Oh, I have the mouse.
You stole it.